Venom's character has had a long history of venturing into some pretty comedic territory over the years. For a carnivorous, vicious, parasitic symbiote, he's been known to bring the laughs from time to time thanks to his very twisted, often sinister sense of humor. But that's part of what makes fans across the globe adore him. So today we're diving deeper into some of those crazy happenings with our list of the top 10 Venom dumbest moments. Now a lot of these moments you could perceive in other ways than just dumb. Some are silly, some are outlandish. But hey, all of them are at least entertaining. So with that in mind, let's jump in. And at number 10, Dog Eye. In 2009, when Norman Osborn was at a new height in power during the Dark Reign story arc, Matt Gargan was working for him, and while he was waiting to be outfitted for a new Scorpion suit, the Venom symbiote bonded with him. Gargan was a particularly nasty Venom, and had no issue with brutally tearing people apart. Hey, someone had to make up for Carnage's absence at the time. At one point though, he gets a bit out of hand, and Osborn orders Bullseye to take him out. Bullseye, known for being able to make a plethora of items into lethal weapons, decides to whip a tiny dog at Gargan, because I'm sure somehow he saw that dog as being a useful weapon. Gotta work with what you have, man. But the poor canine doesn't end up killing Gargan's venom. Instead, it gets stuck in his eye. Luckily for the dog, it ends up living with Gargan lodging it out of his eye socket. Also worth noting is that a little later on, Gargan's venom visits the Daily Bugle and vomits up a squirrel on J. Jonah Jameson's desk, and then later kills a stripper and leaves her body in J. Jonah Jameson's bed. One way to deal with a grudge. Up next, number 9, beat up Superman. Superman is often seen as pretty much invincible. He is called the Man of Steel for a reason. But he's suffered several defeats over the years, although usually at the hands of those who match him in skill or surpass him in intellect. But in the 1996 all-access DC Marvel crossover event, he came face to face with Venom, who proceeded to beat the shit out of him. Like it's a walk in the park for him. Venom also managed to beat up both Superman and Spider-Man while doing it. But the worst part about it is, despite clearly being the more superior fighter in this battle, Venom ends up being defeated in the dumbest of ways. The hero Axis, who is a character owned by both Marvel and DC, shows up with a sonic gun to stop Venom. Can beat up the Man of Steel, but still susceptible to sonic waves. And at number 8, ate a SKRULL. Now eating people ain't nothing new for Venom. He even took a bite at Superman in our last number. It should be no surprise that Venom doesn't really show much prejudice towards any alien when it comes to making them his lunch. He's a symbiote who has a taste for all beings. How swell. Venom even chowed down on a SKRULL in New Avengers issue 49 in 2008, which happened after Secret Invasion, the story arc in which SKRULLs infiltrated Earth by replacing key characters with their own agents. Now Luke Cage, whose daughter had been kidnapped by one of those agents, joined Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and became a teammate of Matt Gargan's Venom, who would use his expert interrogation skills at the raft in order to get some answers from a pair of SKRULLs. And by interrogation skills, I mean he used his knack for snacking and devoured the SKRULL down to its waist. Definitely got the other SKRULL talking though. And at number 7, phone line suicide. One of Venom's many abilities that he was endowed with was that the symbiote can get real small. He can shrink down to the extent of being able to fit into a telephone wire. Now during one storyline when the NYPD tried to lure Eddie Brock into an ambush, the police try to use Eddie's ex-wife Anne Weying as bait. So in order to save Anne while on the phone with Eddie, the symbiote travels to her through the phone lines, bonds with her, which lets her rampage her way out and escape. Anne had bonded with the symbiote once before, but this time was particularly memorable because it really traumatized her and actually caused her to commit suicide shortly after the incident occurred. Hopefully Michelle Williams Anne Weying won't see the same fate. And at number 6, TV appearance. In the 1994 Incredible Hulk vs. Venom, Venom tries out a new career as a TV persona. The plot of this comic saw Hulk and Venom teaming up after a series of earthquakes threatened San Francisco. Now prior to this issue, Venom had decided to use his powers for good back in Amazing Spider-Man issue 375. Plus, this comic was sponsored by UNICEF and was a special mail-away edition, so you bet that Venom was gonna be on his best behavior to an extent. Anywho, Hulk decides to use his Bruce Banner scientific know-how, and Venom uses Eddie's journalism skills to defeat a villain who non-ironically operates under the name Dr. Bad Vibes. Initially the pair are fighting each other, but then decide to swing on over to the television network that Dr. Bad Vibes has been trying to ransom, to send him a message on air where they act like cheesy 80s pro wrestlers and literally say, "We're calling you out, Bad Vibes. We know an egomaniac like you wouldn't tear himself away from the tube." They also say, "We're going to beat you up," timed with a double clap, as one does. Up next, number 5, Peter Parker puppet. In What If issue 114 back in 1998, Marvel gave us a hypothetical story that was based on Secret Wars, one of their most groundbreaking and memorable story arcs. It's the story in which Peter Parker first discovers the symbiote and bonds with him, creating his famous black and white costume. The question that this story asks though is, what if Galactus and Beyonder killed each other in that story, leaving all of the heroes and villains stranded on the Beyonders planet? Well, in this story we now see a generation of characters who are the offspring of those stranded romantic characters. In the comics, Spider-Man, still wearing his black and white symbiote costume, makes an appearance, and at one point he's hit with a sonic blast, which pulls the Venom symbiote off of Peter's body briefly. And what do we see? A skeleton. That means that Venom was using Peter's corpse as a puppet for all of those years. Ugh. That one didn't make you cringe, this one definitely will. In at number 4, Getting Freaky. And it's another What If title at this number. Marvel's What If series has answered a lot of hypothetical questions that we've had about some of our favorite characters over the years. But it's also answered a lot of other questions we really didn't want to know more about, like how the Venom symbiote mates. Now in 2007, a What If issue titled The Other was released, and it shows Peter Parker choosing to make everyone believe that he's dead, giving up his life as a hero. The Venom symbiote finds out that Peter isn't keeping up with his Spider-Man persona, and decides to ditch McGargan, and bonds with Peter instead. Venom then calls himself Poison, and what's on the top of his priority list? Getting laid by MJ, who quickly rejects him. So Poison tries a different route. He creates a symbiote offspring and uses it to control the corpse of Gwen Stacy, who he then has sex with. And at number 3, Screwed with Nuns. In Venom's Sign of the Boss issue 1 back in 1997, Venom heads on over to a church and briefly mingles with some nuns. Now for context, the 90s had a lot of really silly but well-justified plot lines for the symbiote, including that whole chocolate chills him out thing, which by the way is because chocolate has the same chemical in it that the symbiote found in brains, hence why he feasts on brains but also on chocolate. Lots of brains and chocolate. Blurps up the brains like jello though. Ew. Anywho, back to the nuns. So in Sign of the Boss, Venom is forced to work for the government, and one of his missions is to take out terrorists who have been holding a South American president hostage for ransom money, all inside of this church. So how does Eddie Brock pull this one off? Well, he disguises himself as a nun, which totally works, and then reveals himself and obliterates the terrorists, all while in front of a group of children, of course. It even gets better when Venom then turns to the horrified children afterwards, tells them that violence is something that adults do, and then aggressively offers them some chocolate, and is pretty bummed out when they don't say thank you, even though they're scared shitless. And at number 2, the Venom car. The Venom car is a moment that is both beloved and considered quite silly. In Venom issue 36 from 2013, Venom's host was Flash Thompson, who wasn't all that interesting. This meant that writer Cullen Bunn had to pull out some creative tricks to try to make the character work. At one point, when some criminals are eluding Thompson and driving away to escape, Thompson catches sight of an old decrepit car and gets an idea about how he can catch up to them. Appearing only on one full splash page of the comic, the demonic Venom mobile makes a dramatic entrance, surprising and probably traumatizing Thompson's criminals. It's never heard from again. And last but not least, and at number 1, Made Out with the Thing. Venom, no. Keep your tongue inside your mouth. Venom played tonsil hockey with the Thing. Actually, despite that sounding really gross, it's not even as bad as what did happen in the comics. Oh boy, get ready for this one. So back in 2004's Venom issue 11, Venom's story took a bit of a turn for the worse. Stories weren't really all that great in terms of quality, and this is one of the many reasons why. Now issue 11 of this series was the first time Eddie Brock's Venom actually appeared in the volume, revealing that the symbiote in the story prior to this was actually a clone. So of course we learn how this clone came to be. During a battle between the real Venom and Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four intervene, and the Thing starts to overpower Venom. This is when Venom decides to be super unpredictable and sticks his tongue down the Thing's mouth in a pretty obscene moment. And you thought Rogue was the only one who could kill someone by making out with them. So the Human Torch sees this and decides to burn off Venom's tongue, and the Thing coughs it up. A civilian bystander then picks up that piece of tongue, sells it on eBay, and this whole stupid nanites are the force behind Noah's Ark thing comes into play, which is yes a real story arc that was flat out dumb, but that's for another video. This leads to the clone of Venom coming into existence, and it's just all pretty much garbage from there. Long story short, Made Out with the Thing, Human Torch burnt his tongue off, and it got weird. Alright, there we have it friends, which of these moments would you consider the dumbest? And which do you actually totally adore? Let us know in those comments below. If you dug this video, hit that like button and be sure to subscribe to Top 10 Nerd for more Venom and Marvel Comics in general. In the meantime though, thank you everybody for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.